My name is Natalie Draper, and I'm the new library director here. And I'm especially thrilled to introduce this program as it is the first time doing so in person since March of last year. This is one of my favorite parts of the job. This evening, we are proud to host award-winning author Emilio DeGrazia and his musician-composer son Dante DeGrazia. They are here to share in a duet of words and music a family story about a certain immigrant tree and other trees written about in What Trees Know, a new collection of poetry about trees. Emilio, now a professor emeritus at Winona State University and longtime resident of Winona, Minnesota, founded Great River Review in 1977 and has served 2 terms as Winona's Poet Laureate. What Trees Know is his second book of poetry. Dante studied at Luther College, focusing on literature, art, and music, and recently has concentrated on composing and performing in venues throughout the Midwest. In 2017, his work won a Kennedy Center Festival Award for Original Music composed for the Luther College production of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. Tonight's program is made possible by the voters of Minnesota through a grant from the Southeastern Minnesota Arts Council, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. And words are available for purchase after the performance. Please enjoy.
Hi, I'm Emilio, and beside me is Dante, my son, and we're very pleased to be here, and very pleased in particular to see some of our old friends, Leslie Schultz, who has the good fortune to live on Winona Street, and of course Rob Hardy, who has written these wonderful poems, and Steve McCowan, who was a student of mine, I think in 1971 or 70 or something like that, and who is himself a wonderful published poet. The rest of you I would acknowledge personally if I knew you better, but I do want to thank you for taking the time to be here with us and for paying attention, which is involves listening, and that's very hard to do sometimes. It's been a hard year, and I want to apologize for not having my mask on. Everyone tells me that I look a lot better with my mask on, so you'll have to suffer the consequences. What we're doing today is perhaps unusual. Music and poetry have a long history together. Leslie, who's one of the judges for the Shakespeare Sonnet Contest, knows no doubt that the word sonnet comes from the word sonata, which means to sing or to play or to make music. Poetry and music have had this ancient history, really, that goes back to odes and to ballads and so on. But when books came along, music and poetry suffered a sort of divorce. We want to try and remarry them, if we can, in our own way. All the music you hear tonight has been composed or is being improvised by my son Dante. This is all his stuff. He writes poetry as well. Dante's a musician with very varied tastes. He plays in a traditional rock band called Karate Chop Silence. I always appreciate the silence part of it better than the chops. He plays with a group called Sleeping Jesus. He plays jazzy improv with another bunch called Doug Boodle. And lately he's playing with Texas Toast, which does country rock. He's also the main man putting together a big festival in Winona, September 12th and 13th. So if any of you want to camp out and do a music festival, come on down. I'm delighted that he's willing to marry his sounds to my sounds. I've written a poetry collection called What Trees Know, and the poems in it are all about trees in some sense or other. How trees figure into ancient legends, myths, what trees mean to me personally. And at the end of the book, I include an essay I wrote some years ago called Burying the Tree. It's about an immigrant that came to these United States and took up residence in my backyard in Winona, Minnesota. It's a fig tree. It's Minnesota's only fig tree, outdoor fig tree, and I insist on that to survive at least 30 years of winter storms. And we actually get real figs from my fig tree. Although they ripened early this year and sort of slowed down, but they're coming back strong. You'll hear 3 languages tonight: words, music, and silence. We want our words of music to speak on behalf of trees. I've said before that silence is the language of trees, but that's not really correct. We simply are not equal to hearing how trees speak to us. Scientists have invented instruments that they can put next to the trunk of a tree, and they can hear enormous sounds that we can't hear, that the trees are making. There's a lot going on inside those things. We call them trunks, and that seems sort of dismissive. If we had those instruments, we'd hear a noisy bubbling as the watery blood in these trees courses through their veins. And imagine how fine those sounds are as they travel through thin branches into the veins of leaves, and what wonderful music may be alive in them. In school, we're told to listen up. So let's begin listening up. But the harder part is listening down. What's going on where huge parts of the tree are invisible. It is under the ground. There's a lot going on. So trees are strong, silent types. And their messages are silent and secretive in ways we are now just beginning to understand. The title of the first poem in the book is Know Nothing, and that's where I began. The secret is all mine. Ripples on shorelines of seas say nothing clear to me, so I can't make sense of those fish schools lurking big-eyed below, weaving their way like dreams as they swim in my mind. And I can't stare down the sun that glares its fires at me so brilliantly to see how it sees me, or what light it can shed on war, suffering, or love, or why the laziest leaves of autumn trees keep hanging on, or why trees never hold jobs, or run away, and never complain that their heartwood is unseen from inside the windshields of cars, or why trees, unlike lords and priests, invent no theories or theologies, flowering, swaying, still and moved, erring and beautiful. Aspen verse. You probably have seen an aspen forest on a big hillside, and maybe what you haven't seen is that often those forests all they all emerge really from one root system, that all those trees have the same root in a way. E.M. Forster reminds us to only connect. If everything, this life, were made of dots, the prophet would understand why braided aspen roots shudder the surface of a pond while the traffic in L.A. is touched by the whiskers of a catfish, brushing weeds in deep-water murk, and why no thoughts shimmer up and down finger spines as hands make music in black and white on piano keys. And why melodies self-organized into wordless symphonies scatter fishlet schools away from the shadows of sharks. In the pauses between breaths, aspen roots weave embroideries, envied by artists in Paris and New York, and not for sale in the marketplace. You may never know the husband's whisper, what you fail to learn from us today. Why would anyone want to bury a tree? When we picture family trees, we often focus on the branches that extend from a paternal main trunk. How many small branches do we claim to be part of our family? Do we include uncles and aunts, their children, and their children's children too? Family trees could branch out and out. At some point we prune, and we cut the family tree off. At ground level, usually, where the family tree's root system is invisible and buried as if it doesn't exist. In this sense, family trees are rootless. If I started going down and out along the root ganglia into dark history, beyond great-great-grandpersons toward those strangers preceding them, my Italian ancestors are Romans, Goths, Huns, Greeks, Arabs, African migrants before them, some coming all the way from near Arctic regions, others from the tropics, all their lineages converging into an incestuous stew of bloods drawn by wanderers, warmongers, and immigrants. I, child of southern Italians, whom northerners jeeringly called terroni, earthlings, see my origin as a stew of Adam, whose name means red clay, and Eve, life force, brought into being by a chance lightning bolt that perfectly shot some haplessly swimming string of DNA. from a people who made a living from the land. What they understood best was the struggle and the habits of small growing things. For them, the weather was friend or foe. The earth's good humors were dragged out of it with a hoe. It was a terrible shame to waste, for everything had some use. The ground had a strange power to purify. It turned manure into tomatoes and beans. Life was not just a life, but la vita, definite article, the life, the only one. There's something permanent about the picture of my father by the old fig tree in our suburban Detroit backyard. My memory of him at work in the yard, from saving old nails and boards to staking tomato plants with strips of rags, returns me to that tree. It's an old black and white photo I carry in my mind, one strangely suffused with the early evening colors of summer fields and blossoming things. A fig tree in a suburban Detroit backyard, so displaced, like the poet Robert Frost's peach tree, trying to survive a winter storm in Vermont. Says Frost, we think of the tree. If it never again has leaves, we'll know, we say, that this was the night it died. No one knows for sure how the first fig tree arrived. Peasants from southern Italy smuggled a few sprigs in those leathery suitcases. The immigrants lugged off the boats with pillowcases and underwear, birth certificates and old deeds, brown photos of the family, of the goat left behind, essentials and memories. Among them, carefully bedded inside a sheet or the arm of an old wool coat, was a green-stemmed branch of the old fig tree, still standing next to a road leading to and away from a village. The sprig endured the Ellis Island lines, gave customs the slip, ended up on a train heading to New Jersey or Boston or Pittsburgh or Detroit, surviving on its own green sap until one day rough hands dug a small hole and gave it a place in American soil. There it became the stem for other branches of a community bounded more by language than by blood or place. My father got his fig tree started when he took Tony Posa a bottle of wine, homemade of course, and returned with a sprig of Tony's tree. He kept it in a canning jar for more than a month until the tendril roots finally appeared, and on a warm rainy night in late May, I see him digging in the yard, the jar at his side. He mixes sand with the rich loam he's prepared, then finally puts the sprig in the ground, pats the soil all around, and steps back to behold his work. Day after day, he waters it. It looks like a bare brown stick in the mud. And so did my father, there on his knees, as he tried to tease some growth from it. buds appear, and then overnight the first small leaves. And what beautiful leaves they are, especially in miniature. They're dark, bright greens, soft and thick, deepening one of nature's lovely designs furled in on itself like an embryo. The poet Frost, perhaps because he felt the cold not only in his name, but in his bones, understood the fig tree problem well. What comes over a man, he wrote, is it soul or mind that to no limits and bounds he can stay confined? You would say his ambition was to extend the reach clear to the Arctic of every living thing. Why is his nature so hard to teach that though there is no fixed line between wrong and right, there are roughly zones whose laws must be obeyed? The fig tree in Detroit was, like the Italian immigrants, displaced. When American trains took these immigrants further west and north, mainly to factory work in cities, frozen a good part of the year, they found themselves increasingly out of touch with warm skies and the rough, dry soil that had to be coaxed into providing them the stuff of life. America, yes, but America, no. Yes, here was work, and here were perks from work. Indoor plumbing, a washing machine, and maybe someday a car. Cars indeed. My father's New World work took him into the coke ovens and the open hearth of the Ford Rouge factory, the biggest automobile plant in the world. Plant and hearth, indeed. Massive sheds, smokestacks, pulleys, a vast crucible that takes Earth's elements in and alchemically turns them into miles of cars and mountains of waste. Black-faced from the smoke and grime, my father spent 33 years, a Christ age, doing his part to translate the ore from the Minnesota Iron Range into paychecks that paid the bills. Prosperity followed, unnaturally enough. Some of what tree scientist Peter Wohlenben tells us about trees in his wonderful book called The Hidden Life of Trees. What scientists have been discovering is a vast underground network, an arboreal internet, call it the Wood Wide Web, powered by roots and leaves that function like solar panels. Trees actually communicate through their roots, and some offer each other mutual support. Susan Simard, another tree scientist, explains in a YouTube presentation how trees talk to each other. She's discovered that forests are full of mother trees that act as hubs for the feeding of children trees by providing them nutrients from herself. A tree may act as mother to its neighbors, giving them more carbon than it received in return. Later, the debt is repaid and roles are reversed. It's become clear that trees benefit by mutual exchange of food, that they exchange vital information, they warn their neighbors and young trees of threats, and they make life-saving sacrifices for weaker trees. In their own way, trees are social. They have what could be called feelings and memories. They know how to communicate with one another, and the strong are able to assist the weak. We have a limited language to talk about these quiet miracles going on every moment of our lives. When we do, we're accused rightly of being anthropomorphic. The next poem is about an acacia tree. Who would have guessed that acacia trees have their Me Too movements? The acacia. Her many parts are well used. Her seeds for sauces, her tannins for dyes, her branches for fences, roofs, and walls. Her gum sap for ointments and chewing gum. Her oils for perfumes, her blossoms for liqueurs, her essences for mints and potterade. The timbers in the tabernacle mentioned in the book of Exodus have resonated with the acacia's many holy prayers. So the acacia tree is well used, but will not be abused by a famished gazelle on the prowl. As her well-aged aromas spice the air and the gazelle salivates at the sight of her savory leaves, she elevates her root chemistries to new, low-down heights. She permits the gazelle to nibble her, but suddenly her leaf juices, polyphenolic biomolecules, as astringent as sin, turn disgusting and foul. Heartburned, the gazelle turns up his nose to find a fresher tree, sister tree, downwind. But the fresh sister tree is suddenly on alert, has received a whispering warning whiff from the abused acacia. Her gassing tells the unnibbled sister to go sour on the gazelle. The confused gazelle, with a lingering taste of sweet acacia on his lips, must hunger on and on, upwind. During the first few autumns, my father's little New World garden was done in by the cold. Terra maligna, the sky too gray, the tomatoes wilted by frost, the winter indoor life with its aching moments given to staring through windows at a barren yard. Here in Midwestern America, where were the mountains and sea? And how could he save the fig tree from the blizzards of the New World? He begins seeing it. Should he build a special barn for his fig tree, higher than the garage? What comes over a man? Is it soul or mind that to no limits and bounds he can stay confined? Thus, Henry Ford's factory worker, Ford's Igor, My father wonders if he should challenge nature and conquer the winter elements. Did he make my mother a happy woman that night? Trees have sex lives. Let me tell you about oak love life. Here's what the ancient Roman poet Virgil said about the oak tree, and I quote, "Full in the midst of his own strength he stands, stretching his brawny arms and leafy hands." Now let's hear what the oak tree would say. The Roman poet got me all wrong. I have brawny arms and leafy hands, but those fluffy catkins, pollen-gorged, have an ambiance entirely feminine. Then check out the tiny leaf buds up high, the flowers from my other brain, my crown. I've got proof. I'm both staminate and pistolate. At the slightest hint of wind, I swing both ways. I'm homebody, too. King and queen renowned for 1,000-year reigns in one small place. A little fire under me can get me going. Clear out the stubs and shrubs, the underlings. Provide the breathing space I need to give vent to the many ways I breed. My delicate pollen has manly eyes. It loves going everywhere except the shade. As male, I'll fertilize every flower in my way, and my blossom brides hug pollen from far away. After my acorns, like penis heads, begin to swell, they nose forest nooks to set their roots. That keeps my tribe going on and on. We're made this way. Please ask us why. Then ask heaven and earth and the Holy Spirit of air why we're so promiscuous. The chill sets in long before September 1st. My father gazes at the fig tree, watches as the leaves begin to fall. Then on a late October Sunday, he's in the yard again. He bends the tree toward the ground. He ties it down with a rope. Around it he piles leaves and grass, and on top, basketfuls of manure hauled in from the countryside. This heap is walled in by tightly stacked bales of hay. As the temperatures fall, only the topmost bales of his fig barn are visible above the snow. What was he thinking about on sleepless nights? Bills to pay and too much work to do after work? A disturbing letter, his mother, still in the old country at 91, is very ill. Will he ever return to Italy to see her again? He now knew how way leads on to way, how the chain reactions of choice lock us in to limited returns. As the snows melt away in early May, he pulls the bales aside and begins digging away at the mass of manure and rotting leaves. Little nubs bigger than raindrops appear and then fall off. Tony Polza comes over for a glass of wine, carrying with him a few of his own figs, wrapped in a linen cloth. How come I never have figs, my father asks. Because, like I told you, says Tony, you gotta bury the fig tree good. Bury a tree? In late fall, my father trims the tree back to its proper bounds, digs a trench along the base of the garage, bends the tree into the trench, ties it down, and buries it. When the snows come, it looks like a grave. For the first time, I see my father dead. And when my mind reels away, I see the grandfather in Italy I have never seen. It takes years more for me to see myself buried there too. Where does music go after it's played? Sounds like roots are invisible, but do they disappear? My sister Aurora, whose name means dawn, by the way, died a couple years ago. But maybe her piano, its actual wood, has something to say to us. Song life. After my sister Aurora passed away, she who played the old upright and sang, her melodies hovered like an aura, sunsetting light in our living room. When she lay dying, I felt the slow fall of the rhythms of her breath, the air I held in whenever the mailman appeared as shadow before our front door. Evenings, I keep recalling her melodies and conjure the colors of her dress, the one she wore the night she spun into the arms of the man who loaned her his name, and how, after she married him and retreated into the noise of years, her piano became her confidant and her only lover in the house. What did the lumber in that upright take in from her fingers and voice? What melodies did it memorize when she sang and played them again? One night, when they were alone in their beds, the two men, haulers, who pitched the piano from their truck into a dumpster ditch, were awakened by the gravity of its last chord. So what do roots know? Their eyes mud-smeared in the dark. How do they decide it's time again to burrow their way down, purl more deeply toward the succulence of moisture and minerals that ascend to unfurl in sky like prayers unleaving from autumn trees? Eons ago, what tangle of root DNA spiraled forth to become the forest clans that crossed mountains and seas to be hewn into shelters where we live and toil cross-eyed in midnight oil, inscribing our whims on Bible leaves while re-engineering the genius of genes into our manuals and machines. The grammars of what lost languages inform tendrils and taproots wise enough to translate the alchemies into trunk, branches, flowers, and fruit. Listen dearly to the chords pianos exhale from wood deemed dead. Listen again dearly to the chords pianos exhale from wood deemed dead, and to roots taking tones in from dirt. trees over my head, and the figs begin showing themselves inside the canopy of leaves. They turn purple in the August heat, and they sag and fall into my father's hands. Here, he says, a milky drop is oozing from its stem, like this. With his thumbs, he splits it open for me to look inside. What do my teenage eyes see as I gaze into the pink, seed-filled flesh? Something I'd never seen before. My father lifts it closer to my lips. Taste it, he says. Yuck, I say as I force it down. Taste naturally matures when given proper respect, as do memories. For many years, I walked right past the ripening figs. The taste of figs is as un-American as my parents when they jabber in Italian in front of my friends. I think New World highways are better than Old World paths. Rather desperately, I want to look and feel American. Much later, when I begin seeing my future in my past, I develop a desire for figs. The next time you're in a grocery store and see pears, bananas, peaches, nuts, apples, don't look forward. Think back. Scattered on a busy boulevard lawn, the fallen apples blush and shine as they wait to be chosen and held. No questions asked about ownership or about how seeds morph into fruit, unfurled from soil's netherlands. Apples, rained on the grass from above, from blooms flowered like wedding gowns in the fragrance of evenings and dawns. Free, for bees delirious with desire, for buds swollen into unforbidden fruit, delicious, hanging on for dear life, until a breeze sends them forth quietly, down onto the lawn next to the street nobody owns. The faces in passing cars fixed on taillights, not bright enough to shine on one soul thankful enough to see the gift. Stop, gather, and feast. We cannot tell a lie. It's the deals we've cut for ourselves that are chopping down the family tree. Think today, poor Afghanistan. How many trees does it take to manufacture one car? How many American highways carved from rich soil did my father see leading away from the mountains and sea? After those highways drove him to the automobile plant in Detroit, did he see how the streets of that city, configured as a grid imposed on the radiating spokes of the wheel, were luring him further from the taste of figs? How many times, contemplating the factory fires, did he pause to ask, what am I doing here? By then, it was too late to back out of the big Faustian deal America was making with the machine. So we light our fires. We make smoke of our despair. We spew our troubles out and seldom say, the trees, dear trees, will give us back our air. While cars and wars exhaust our lives with care, the forest roots keep digging into clay. We light our fires, make smoke of our despair. While stem and branch do work we never hear, flowers and leaves return on time each May. And trees, the trees, they give us back new air. They give more than they receive. It is their way. We light our fires, make smoke of our despair, while trees, their lovely leaves, give us new air. We would have to fell a forest to produce the paper necessary to properly celebrate this plant. Trees enduring in what seems lifeless cold provide all manner of fruits, berries and fruit, nuts, berries and fruit. Their wood shelter and heat. Their leaves are the solar panels giving us the air we breathe. A tree's natural art, standing between sky and earth, crosses our high yearning for transcendence with the limitations of our humanity. My father's little fig tree grows in significance as I begin to see it at the center of ancient religion, legends, and myths. Though trees are said to provide home remedies for many human ills, though many unlettered peoples deem trees animate and sensitive, the Ojibwe, for example, reluctant to cut them down out of concern for inflicting pain. Trees in Chinese lore bleeding and crying out when hacked or burned. And though the great northern forests are the original Gothic temples, embodiments of the life spirit, though the Swedes, Slavs, and Lithuanians were tree worshippers before their conversion to the faith symbolized by the Calvary and Christmas trees. And though several myths have at their center a drama featuring woman, serpent, man, and tree, their setting, a garden radiant in the sun, the tree of knowledge and of good and evil, synonymous in some of these myths with the tree of immortal life. Yet the tree looms largest when the great poets, among them Blake, Shelley, Yeats, figure the tree as well as the human mind, great rooted blossomer of intellect, imagination, and song. All this in my father's little fig tree, which I hereby name my family tree. In societies all over the world, what has the tree symbolized? The tree is the instrument wind plays to orchestrate the rhythms of blackbirds and days with the rhymes of wildflowers and night. She, the tree who knows the serpent's embrace, the ways of the underworld, the wily commands of right and wrong, is named the world tree, the tree of all seeds, the soma tree, the tree of enlightenment, the tree of knowledge, the cross, the tree of life. I've asked you to think about what roots maybe know. Now here, I think, is what leaves know. They know the power of place, their role in the dazzling outcome of roots, the art of living within view of the two fragrances of life, sun and shade. They know the politics of free passage for air allied to no state, the turn the other cheek tactic for storms gone wild. They know how to brew the air we crave, how to orchestrate the incomparable music composed by anonymous wind. Leaves how to sway and dance, how to put their colors on, blaze away, be outward invisible signs of a big, beautiful thing wonderfully in the way. On foggy, still nights, they know the atonement of sleep, the moment to let go.